What's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 1 of the GTR show. GTR is an acronym for Guitar, Technology, and Recording, and I am so excited that you're here. Brand new year, brand new show, and we are going to be covering how you can get your practice game up on rails and maximized for 2021. There are many, 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 many challenges to practicing. And I know that because I am a practice fanatic, and it is a really interesting thing. So what we're going to be doing is kind of talking about the ins and outs of practice. One of the things that I've been doing with my students is last week, preparing to go into today's lessons that go after this live stream, I asked them to set some goals. So I'm going to encourage you to start there. Set 5 goals for 2021. And I would like those not to just be, oh, I want to play better, but very specific goals. The sort of goals that you can actually measure. The sort of goals that you can set, achieve, maintain, and go beyond, such that when we have this conversation in 2022, you're like, yes. So what does that look like? Well, that looks like a number of things, but we're going to get right down to the heart and the soul of this thing right now. So the phases of practice. So the interesting thing is that Fridays are my prep day for this show, because this show is a big deal to me. This is, if you will, kind of prime time on Saturday. And so I'm going to make this deal with you, is that if you invest your time here, I'm going to invest my time on Friday, and we're going to make this the best possible. Your feedback is super valuable. I believe my moderator, also known as the chairwoman of the board, has set up a link inside the various threads here, so you can actually submit questions, because we want to field specific questions. Always a good thing to know, not just kind of what I'm thinking, but more importantly, what you're thinking. That said, if you take a look to my left there, you're going to see practice phases: discovery, observation, refining, repetition, performance, precision, satisfaction. Now, the interesting thing is that this is all about my sitting in this very chair, practicing with my buddy, the metronome. All right, so the first thing is this discovery thing. Once you've set some goals, and by the way, rather than just go, I want to play faster in 2021, as my students said, oh, I want to increase my speed, one of the things I said to them was like, hey, what do you mean by speed? You mean single string speed? Do you mean the ability to alternate pick arpeggios? Do you mean two-hand tapping? Do you mean legato? Be specific. Once you go from the decision list to the actual walking of that out, that's where these practice phases become so important. So the exercise that I am working on that is just busting my chops is this concept of taking the minor pentatonic in groups of 4 notes. That exercise has my name all over it. I practice that as eighth notes at 80 beats per minute, because in the discovery phase, I'm kind of like, hey, you know what? And this is the most important thing I can tell you. If you take away one thing from today, practice it slowly. Because in the discovery phase, when you're practicing it slowly, and I would suggest starting at 80 BPM, you're going to see the repetitive mistakes, because they're going by slow enough that when you catch them, you recognize them. You're going to be able to then, just as you're running through that exercise, and the discovery process and the observation process are interrelated. Discovery is where you're just kind of beginning to kind of go, oh my word, this is what this exercise is about. And in turn, the observation thereof, you kind of go, oh, wow. So the whole thing about playing the minor pentatonic in groups of 4 notes is there are all these really uncomfortable finger rolls like this. That is to say, oh, get down there. There we go. So that little guy right there, that little finger roll is basically in every single transition. Not only that, when you get up to pattern number 5 there, with the pinky is having to do this little transition. Not only that, in terms of the alternate picking, you're literally every other sequence, you're playing four notes across three strings. And that, unless you're an alternate picking master, is really, really, really hard. It's really, really hard when you're doing it in combination with these finger rolls. And the interesting thing is when I was studying with Joe Satriani, he gave me this exercise called the finger roll exercise A. And basically that little puppy was all about this concept of doing these finger rolls because he knew how important that process was going to be. And so I am so thankful that he did. So this whole group of four notes thing, why is that important? This, again, is about setting goals and having the things you do align with them. That is kind of one of the quote-unquote Eric Johnson-esque riffs that I've always purposely just kind of gone, I'm not going to invest the time to go after that. And towards the end of last year, my buddy Mason, you probably heard about this from Vertex, invited me to be part of one of his demos. And his whole thing was taking the Steel String Supreme pedal and having me kind of do something in the vibe of Eric Johnson. And that absolutely terrified me. So my guess is there are things that terrify you. The idea of getting in front of a room full of people and then either wailing or flailing is kind of what that's about. And so confronting our fear is one of the best things we can do. So thankfully, Mason really kind of forced me to just kind of go, I've got to own this thing. So in so doing, I kind of went, okay, you know what? The time has come. And the reality of practicing this sort of thing is all about having that sense of what it is that you need to be doing so you know how to map these different things. So the discovery process is just kind of going, oh my word, that's what's going on at pattern number 5. Basically, when played kind of using classical hand position, the concept of one finger per fret, pattern number 5 is 2-4, 2-4, 1-4, 1-4, 2-4, 2-4, 4-2, 4-2, 4-1-4, 1-4, 2-4-2. Every single one of those combinations has got the pinky. Every single one. Not only that, multiple pinky notes. Not only that, 2 pinky notes. And in the midst of all those finger rolls, so you're like, oh, snap. So what it means that as you're in the observation phase of kind of going, okay, this is what I'm going to have to do to make this happen, this is where you do that. That gets us to the refining stage. The refining part is where you're going, okay, I kind of have this thing up on rails, but this certain pattern sequence, man, pattern number 5 is just killing me. So rather than just kind of going all the way up and down the neck, every time you get to pattern number 5, just kind of flailing away on that, just kind of going, okay, you know what? First of all, I'm going to do it slowly enough that I feel more in control of the tempo than I don't. The advantage of that is that you really get some of these other things happening that we're going to talk about in kind of the next phase here. But the idea is that you really begin to get a chance to feel the rhythm of the exercise. You feel where you've got to place your fingers. And the hardest thing about this particular exercise is actually getting to the point where as opposed to or it's literally every note is right smack up against the next one. And that's just painstaking. But this is, if you jump all the way down to the very end of the list, satisfaction. There is no better feeling than when you've actually gone, okay, I've gone all the way through this thing. I've done it at 80 BPM as eighth notes. It's painfully slow, but you know what? This exercise is not going to be my nemesis, and I'm going to attack it, again, using this process of discovery, kind of going, what's this thing about? Observation, like, oh, snap, that's what it's about. Then refining is going, hey, you know what? Let me just kind of loop not only pattern number 5, but if there's a spot in pattern number 5, or this little bizarre jump over here with the first finger in pattern number 3, just targeting and isolating maybe the bottom 3 strings. And then repeating that same thing, and then the performance phase. Now, this is why this is so important, because this applies to anything that you're practicing, it be a song, be it a rehearsed solo, be it your rhythm playing it with a performance mentality in mind means you're executing it for real. I remember my buddy Ahmad, amazing drummer, was talking about when he was working with Richie Kotzen, and Richie had said something to the effect of, every time he's in the recording studio, he records it as if it's the take. And I don't know about you, but I'll speak honestly. There are times that I'm in the recording studio and I'm trying to find my vibe. I'm just the sort of player that I gotta get my sea legs on certain different things. And I think this is one of the unique things about being a stylist versus like Richie, versus a guitar player who's endeavoring to learn new things. I'm constantly endeavoring to learn all sorts of new things. And in so doing, I'm constantly putting myself in a place where I'm uncomfortable with the instrument. So the point being is that when you take something that you're uncomfortable with, it's hard for you to do, and you run it through all these different phases, then that ends up with that feeling of satisfaction, because I guarantee if you do it slowly, long enough, you're going to get the result. So what is like a kind of like a full-in deep dive on something like this? Well, for me, that was spending basically some time. What I like to do is I'm kind of watching YouTube videos and so on and so forth and learning. I'll be practicing stuff, just kind of letting my fingers doing it. But that is a very different thing than actually just sitting there with the metronome at 80 BPM and just going 100% focus. Now, let me just get over here real quick. All right, documenting tempo, trouble spots, what you learned, and weaknesses. Write it down. Write it down, write it down, write it down. The tempos in particular, because that way you can go back and go, I was at 80 BPM, now I'm at 100. This is awesome. All right, so let me talk a little bit about metronomes and so on and so forth. I have so many great friends that constantly message me. If I am using a metronome app and I do not put my phone in airplane mode, this thing is a constant distraction. And that is something that I can't afford to have happen, which is why it's a little bit off screen here. And when I go back and add some additional data to the YouTube description down below, I'll put a link over to the Strobo Plus HD from my good friends over at Peterson. That is basically, it's always here. I've got it plugged in USB. And I spent some time, just kind of going, I hadn't had the USB cable plugged in. So the battery would basically would go for a couple minutes and then turn off. So I'm like, hey, you know what? Let me try spending some time with the iPhone there, pull up an app. Well, first of all, the app is like every 20 minutes, unless you make some in-app purchases, distracting you, going, don't you want to buy this? Or here's this upgrade. I'm like, no. And then when I'm using the phone as my practice guide, all these text messages and email are coming in. Distracted. So one of the important caveats about all of this is just making sure, I'm going to turn this off for just a second. Let's go over here. There we go. Is having a place and a time set aside that is distraction free, both interpersonal and digital distraction. Now, the interesting thing is that my wife and I have come to an understanding. This is a conversation for those of you that are cohabitors. I was down here, metronome going. She knows the look, and she also knows the potential for me to be less than civil when I'm in practice mode, because she knows how seriously I take it. But the thing is, she comes up and she can hear it, and she drops off some food. She doesn't say a word, and she heads back out, which is so cool. I was thinking, you know what? This is totally going to be something I'm going to bring up as, one, a praise for her, but as two, there's communication that happens most of the time, hopefully in a very pleasant way. Just, hey, when I'm practicing, I really want to do this. That way, when we're hanging out, I'm not distracted about the fact that I feel badly about practicing. Because here's the reality. I promise you, if you don't feel great about your playing, the way you practice is one of the biggest things you can change about all of that. All right, so again, once you set your top 5 goals, the things around that, first of all, there is a form that I think Melissa has told you about, and once I kind of am done with the dissertation, I want to then kind of take a look at some comments. And again, please put your questions through on the form. Makes it really easy for me to organize this and not lose the important flow of what I want to have. So here's the thing. Out of those 5 things, one of those things can be, being better at improvising. Well, the interesting thing about improvising is that generally doesn't happen classically with the metronome at 80 and then 85 and then 90. That's a different type of practice. Now, that said, let's talk about metronome practice for just a moment. I start at 80 as either 8th notes or 8th note triplets because it's slow enough you can really hear everything that's going on. And it's slow enough that if you're doing these, what I call them overrings, and we're going to come back to them in a minute. Sorry, I'm going to purposely do it. Sorry. Those notes that are ringing together versus running. And as slow as that might actually seem, the accuracy, I'm like, that was yesterday's hour. And I feel good about that. There's not, I remember when I was at GIT, Steve Vai gave a clinic. And one of the things he said, to paraphrase, was he said, I don't practice for my best days. I practice for my worst days. I was like, that's really good. Look, it's not always happening when you pick up the instrument. You're not always going to pull down the magic notes and the legato is going to flow beautifully. But it's where you practice the underlying techniques that stuff really pays off. So generally speaking, I would suggest with any particular exercise, like this groups of 4 thing, it's a really hard exercise, like exceedingly hard. And if you can do it flawlessly, awesome. Virtual high five. So here's the things. One of my goals is I want to own all kind of the classic pentatonic sequence licks. Groups of 4s, groups of 3s, groups of 3 strings. I just want to own the pentatonic such that that group of kind of classic rock influenced licks, I can shred them all the way up and down the neck. Like when I can do that, I'm going to be so happy. And the only way that's going to happen is from that business happening. So again, defining your goals defines your path. Then the idea of actually documenting what's going on, documenting your tempos. So documenting what the trouble spots are, actually writing down, hey, that pattern number 5 there. All right, maybe that means that there's some micro practice time spent just on pattern number 5, like I did yesterday. The great thing about setting aside an hour for one individual exercise is it enables you to spend time with it. So metronome practice, if you can do some, let's say we're just talking about playing straight up and down the minor pentatonic. There we go. I'm really glad that's got a light because with the in-ears in, I couldn't hear a note. The idea is that that's an exercise you can keep bumping up to 85 and then 90, 95, but eventually you're going to hit a ceiling. And the first time you spend the extended hour with that exercise, you're going to find that ceiling. And then what you do is you back off 4 BPM. And usually in that first session, when you back off those 4 BPM, you start adding them on one at a time. And most of the time, you'll move past that initial ceiling. That is to say, let's say I got to 145, backed it off to 141, 142, 143, 144, 145. Usually I can get another 2 or 3 BPM out of there, which means already you're starting to bump that puppy up. So then at that point, the next time you come to revisit that exercise, I'm going to talk about some of the different extended lesson plans, some of which are kids' meals, if you will. Just making sure that 5 days a week you can commit to 30 minutes a day, of which 15 minutes is maintenance practicing and 15 minutes is covering some new thing or something that you're trying to work on, such that it's continuing to develop. What you might do is take those 5 days, and each one of those 5 days you assign one kind of elective, or maybe on the first, third, and fifth day, you come back to that same thing like the groups of 4 notes, and then the other 2 days, you work on maybe sweep picking on one of those days and tapping on the other. But the idea is, and again, you want to document this. This is what's so important. All right, the tempos. Documenting those tempos is a big deal. Documenting the trouble spots. It means you can come back to that exercise and go, boom, right. Also, document what you learned. It's a funny thing is that if you're the same kind of person that I am constantly learning and constantly studying, I forget more stuff in a day than I remember in a week, and that's a real problem. So documenting that stuff down is super, super, super important. Also, what your weaknesses are. It's like, hey, you know what? My pinky is el poopy. It's short. It's small. But with some technique tips, the idea of extending the hand. As a matter of fact, we're going to go there right now. One of the challenges that people have. Let me get out of here. One of the challenges people have is with left hand technique. It's one of the reasons I'm constantly harping on my students, like, hey, thumb down. When we're going for classical hand position, we want that thumb in the middle back of the neck, and it generally moves with the hand like this. You may see it poke up just a little tiny bit above the top of the neck when I'm down on the bottom string or bottom pairs of string, but more often than not, as soon as I do that, I'm doing this, and then every so often I will do this to get that extension on the last joints of those fingertips. So this is one really important thing that I would suggest doing, is grabbing a hold of a pen or a pencil and doing this thing where your fingers are kind of stretching along the pencil like that, and in turn you're curling and arching those fingertips so they're the equivalent of facing up the neck. And in so doing, what happens by curling and arching this finger in particular, what it does is it draws that pinky in closer to the guitar neck. And what ends up happening is that you're not, because this guy's kind of, if you will, drawn into the neck, the pinky's not able to float up in the air there. And that is a giant problem for so many people. And the deal is that if you're really wanting to get those guys really going, that extension is all about getting those hands like that. And so the deal is, when I want to play kind of a traditional blues, when I want to go for that type of vibe, thumbs absolutely around the top of the neck. But there's a time and a technique for everything. All right. Micro lesson about hand position over. So heading back into this business right here. Note what your weaknesses are. If that pinky is flopping around, if you got floppy pinky, you know it. I'm working with a couple students whose names I won't mention. By the way, let's do a little bonus pinky exercise, because one of them said, my pinky's terrible. What do you got for me? And I'm like, oh, I got something for you. And this exercise, people hate me for this, but it's great. So what it is basically it starts off with the combination of fingers that you very rarely will use will be the second, third, and fourth, which is why using them together, I'll starting off with, we're initially just going to use the third and fourth like this. And if you're feeling legatus, now right there at the end, I want to bring up a really important point that I think is right here. There we go. At the second to the bottom of that list is subdivisional accuracy. As I was coming down those guys, my subdivisional accuracy was fluctuatory. That means it kind of sucked. But, the idea of forcing your second, third, and fourth fingers to play legato, if you want to work on your pinky, it's really cool. Now, one of the other things about that particular kind of an exercise, and then we'll get back into the core curriculum here, but this is important, is because you're using the second, third, and fourth, you're so distracted doing this very strange combination that you start to forget about the fact that you're working out the pinky. And that's not accidental. When I set that up for my students, I was like, you know what? We know it's an exercise to strengthen the pinky, but at the same time, it's all about providing enough of a distraction such that you're kind of doing something that's going to allow the pinky to get into the mix. But also, initially I thought about just using the third finger in the pinky. I was like, you know what? Let's get that second finger in there. All right. So let's see here. All right. So that gets us to what to listen for, because honestly, this is one of the other things we're going to be covering in the show. Is that I spend a lot of time, as you guys have heard me talk about most likely, and if you're new, by the way, welcome, welcome, welcome. And to everybody that's here, first of all, thanks so much for showing up on a Saturday. I'm so glad you're here. All right, so the deal is that I'm constantly, and this is one of the things that I'm so excited to share with you, because one of the biggest problems guitar players have is this, is that they know what they know, right? It's kind of like, and part of what we're going to talk about a little bit later into the show is some technology stuff. And it's just so funny. I've spent a lot of time studying such that when I go to set up some new gear, I have varying levels of intelligence about what I'm doing and varying levels of outright stupidity about the stuff that I don't yet get. Because I'm a learner, I'm kind of endeavoring to serve, if you will, quote unquote, this community by sharing the things that I've learned. All right, the point being is that a lot of guitar players just don't know what to listen for or what to practice. So now that we've talked about the picking the goals and whatnot, we'll come back and I'll offer a couple of suggestions around things to actually practice. But I want to talk about what to listen for first, because this is really, really important. Because once you've decided what your 5 goals are, and then you start mapping some exercises to those, and then you map out a practice routine, a practice schedule, then knowing what to listen for is super, super important. So at the top of the list there is even volume, even tempo. Now this is one of the things that makes the metronome so important. In fact, I'm sure everybody has heard, it's really important to practice with the metronome. Well, why? If you take it from slow to fast, you're able to eradicate all the repetitive mistakes. And by documenting what those mistakes are, you're actually going, I played that note wrong in that pattern every time. I'm going to target and isolate that little spot and just loop it over and over in a nice slow tempo, and I'm going to fix that, and that problem will go away. But if we're not listening for that, and even if it's things such as, if we're doing a legato thing, is there a gate? There's a gate. All right. Hang on, I got to turn this gate off just one sec. Oh, hang on, not that. You. There we go. Now what you heard there's that note, but there's also, it's interesting, that right there is my pinky muting the 5th string as opposed to barring across it. So what we were listening for, before I kind of noticed that, that's really annoying. All right, the idea is we're listening for, as I'm hitting the first of every 3 notes, how is the volume of the pick note? Compared to the hammered notes. Now the other thing about practicing slowly, take a listen to this. That is so annoying, but listen to. Do you hear that when I'm playing it fast? Maybe, but if I hadn't pointed out, you might not have. And the same thing is true when we're playing. So this is where playing things slowly becomes so important. You're like, the heck is that sound? Now this is one of the great things about taking the ideas like pulling pieces apart and doing things slowly. You begin to kind of go, okay, that's about me getting a little tiny bit more arch, and that is about this guy right here getting a little tiny bit more articulation. That's also where this whole kind of even tempo business. Also, the subdivision method, if you did the 30-day thing, the interesting thing is I could see text come in from one of my favorite students. They're all my favorite students. They always say that right about the kids. They're all my favorite kids. But totally distracted and my tempo wavered. So this is the whole thing about the digital distraction. Here's the thing. I'm just as guilty of all of this stuff as anybody. I'm totally a work in progress. The even tempo bit, the difference is, especially when you're working on legato, every single one of the guitar teachers know what I'm talking about. That's not it. I'm a little quiet on that middle note. So we all have stuff to work on. Which gets us to an exercise. If you want to work on your legato, that's basically up, down, up. Going pick, hammer, hammer, pick, pull, pull. Pick, hammer, hammer. That is to say, next string. Then the painful part on the way down, pick, pull, pull. Pick, hammer, hammer. Pick, pull, pull. Now, what would I say if one of my students stopped? I'd say, all right, the idea is not to stop. And this is, I started to talk about this a minute ago. The whole point about the metronome and practicing with the metronome is that it's the equivalent of some song and some drummer playing away, and eventually, there's some little phrase that you're going to play when the drummer's playing. How about the octaves? And then it's a matter of, okay, I hit the 2 instead of the 1. Going, okay, mapping that. And that's where kind of being conscious of the note, hey, I played an A instead of a G. Kind of go, okay, let's fix that. Because the thing about these repetitive mistakes is that if you don't catch them, they're like weeds. They're just gonna, they don't go away. All right, even volume, even tempo, over rings. Now this is where this whole thing we talked about before, that business will get you into trouble. And if you don't practice it slowly, it's gonna be a problem. Now the interesting thing is this open string noise is this business. See if I can do it in time. You get the point. What happens is we're moving from the low E string to the high E string. Is when we're on the low E string, the fleshy part of that first finger is muting the 5th through the 1st strings. Then when we're over on the 5th string, the tip of the 1st finger is muting the 6th string, and the fleshy part of that finger is muting the upper strings. Then when we get over to the 4th string, the tip of that 1st finger mutes the side of the 5th string, and the fleshy part, the treble strings. At that point, the right hand's catching all 6 strings. That can use a little bit of work there, but most of the time when I'm just hitting that note, I'm not hitting all. There we go. Another thing to do is this is a really important part of this. Again, a bunch of the stuff just never gets talked about. It's like, okay, well, how do I know when I'm actually fretting it and when I'm not? Well, let me fret it, and let me not fret it. Oh, problem solved, right? So this is kind of the thing is that it's just one of those things is like, all right, there's an open string noise. I don't know where it's happening. That little targeting and isolating is a big deal. Okie dokie. First of all, I do need to take a moment in just a sec to say hello to everybody in chat here. Let's see. Open string noise. We'd covered that. Pick slices. Right. So this... Let's see if I can do a bad version of that. Somebody out there would cringe. That's me. So generally speaking, I would suggest being, if this is 90 degrees, at about 40 degrees to the, let's get over here. There we go. At about, as opposed to 90, I like to go at about 40. All right, this isn't my usual pick, and it's got a little chirp. Yeah, that right there. Chirp is not my thing, and so, but nothing wrong with chirp if chirp's your thing, but... So the idea, I guess maybe this tone has a little chirp in it. In any case, I could probably and would probably dial it out, but once you add some of the glory tone back in, that is to say all this stuff, I guess a little chirp helps, but generally if I were practicing with a clean tone, I would probably take that little frequency and I'd probably pull it out. But it's a good idea to be able to hear that. But the whole thing about slicing is you get all sorts of unwanted, undesirable picking noise that you don't want to have in there. Yes, sirree, Bob. Okay, pick slices. Subdivisional accuracy. This is one of the things that really gives a lot of guitar players a hard time. So this is where one of the things we're going to do here, and it will include guitar playing. There are going to be times that I'm going to ask you to pick up your guitar, like right now. Okay, so we're going to be playing G, A, and B. I know what happened. I hit my little headphone thing there because like the volume kind of went away every so often. There's a connector that connects these guys, and it's a little phase thing that happens here. There we go. All right, so the deal is what we're going to do is we're going to take G, A, and B, and we're going to play them. We're going to go between eighth notes, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3. And we're going to be calling out eighth notes, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, calling out the beat that we're playing, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then the same thing for 8-note triplets, 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3. So, got your guitar? Good, here we go. 1 and, so we're going to go eighth notes and then eighth note triplets. Why am I doing it in that order? Eighth notes subdivide the quarter note by 2. Eighth note triplets subdivided by 3. It always makes sense to kind of, the further you go into it, the more you subdivide it. I'm going to play it for one. I'm going to play it actually, and then you can just kind of hear it. So it's just 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3. So when I'm playing the eighth notes, I'm kind of going G, A, B, A, G, A, B, A. When I'm playing the eighth note triplets, I'm going G, A, B, G, A, B, G, A, B, G, A, B. And if you're feeling fancy pants, you can call the notes out, or you can just call out 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, and so on and so forth. So we're going to start off with the eighth notes. I tell you what, let's just take the eighth notes for just a minute in case you're new to this. So here we go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and, sorry, 1 and 2 and, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and I feel like some very strange form of aerobics instructor. All right, now we're going to do eighth note triplets. 1 2 3 2 2 3 3 2 3 4 2 3 1 2 3 2 2 3 3 2 3 4 2 3 1 2 3 2 2 3 3 2 3 4 2 3. Now, why is it important to call out this 1 2 3 2 2 3 3 2 3 4 2 3 business? 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E. As we start doing some things in subsequent weeks, we're going to be applying rhythm in a musical framework, 1E and a 2E and a 3E. So if you don't know how to count through 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E, one, you may hear that and kind of go, where is that? Well, if you don't have the ability to kind of go, how tight do I have to have the subdivisional ruler to find that? You're going to not necessarily be able to play it knowing exactly what it is. So, again, now what we're going to do, and this is, for some folks, it's going to be a little bit of a challenge, but the whole point is specifically this is toggling between the different subdivisions. Eighth notes for a measure, eighth note triplets for a measure, goes like this. I'm going to play it, and then I'm going to stop. 1 and 2 and 3, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 2 3 2 2 3 3 2 3 4 2 3. Here we go. 1 2 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 2 3 2 2 3 3 2 3 4 2 3 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 2 3 2 2 3 3 2 3 4 2 3. All right, so the idea about that is it gets you really aware of what subdivision you're actually playing. And once you actually know what you're playing, you actually know what you're playing. And it means that you go, oh, my eighth note triplets or my 16th note triplets, you know, I need to work on getting them tight. And this is this concept down below that. After subdivisional accuracy is this concept of note flow. The idea is, are the notes or is it got this kind of stuttery type of vibe? Because it means you're practicing it too fast. And that's kind of where all of this stuff kind of matters. All right. So, all right. So, with that said, hang on. Let's get over to here. And there we go. All right. First of all, hello. All right. So, there are some questions here. So, let me start there. My wonderful technician here has sent through a link. So let's take a look at what people have asked here. There we go. All right. And by the way, we are totally fine with asking tech questions as well. Because as a bunch of you will know, there we go. Let's get that window over here. Come on. Ooh, there we go. Oh, what a great question. All right, excellent. Okay, Doug has a unique style, more on his anchoring picking approach. Thank you. Okay, so that's a great question. So first of all, they are not down here, but the concept is if you think about holding your right hand up in the air like this and just kind of moving it back and forth, that's the most natural position and motion for your right hand to be in. And again, if you think about how most of us play rhythm, this isn't the best funk tone, but what's going on, Bradley? The Richard Simmons of guitar. I asked for that. Everybody loves Richard Simmons. So the same thing, I mean, you don't play funk like, because it loses a, so the idea is, as we're playing alternate picking, we want that same sort of fluidity going on there. Putting 3 of these in front. Oh, question. Yes, Andy Card. Yes, please. So the idea is that we're taking that same motion, and what we're doing here is we're bringing the fingers down to the body like that for 1, 2, 3, 4 bases of support. So it's like a table. Again, 1, 2, 3, 4. Shredding with the oldies. I was going on Food Ninja. So the idea is it's literally just taking this. It's as if you had the guitar like this and you went and dropped it down there and kind of went, oh, okay. So it's literally taking the same motion and just kind of just going, bringing it into the instrument. And that enables you to, again, get this business muted. And it's just a really natural picking motion. And the great thing about that, again, if you think as you hold the pick in your hand and just kind of let the hand droop, it's literally, you don't do this, you don't do the windshield wiper. And there are people like Zach who do a great job of that. But the reality, again, if you think about playing rhythm guitars, the other thing about that is that when you're using your arm, one of the challenges is, and this is one of the important things that that is a nuance to this, but there we go. Oh, okay. Hey, love it. Thanks, Melissa. We don't always want, if we're playing rhythm, there are times we go, and same thing when we're playing a melody or lead. Again. Now, one of the other things that, I'm going to presume everybody here knows, but if you listen to this, and I will turn on some of the secret sauce. There are times, first of all, there's the bloom factor. If you hit a note too hard, it doesn't. Now, the interesting thing is that, I'm using the delay there, and I'm here. There's no speaker going on here. That's just the Helix rack going straight out into the Apollo there. But the ability to hit the note softly, but let the note start to bloom, even without hearing a speaker, which is interesting. If you hit it hard, you don't really get that natural where it starts to get bigger. It just kind of stays the same-ish. So the idea of being able to play lead, you also play with different levels of attack, and you're driving the front end of the virtual amp as well. It's awesome. Thanks, Jim. Appreciate it. Louis Olvera. Thanks, Louis. All right. Hang on. Questions. Task. All right. So Tom, more on the anchoring picking approach. So so great question. So the anchoring thing, so let's talk about, because right hand is something that is super, super important to lots of different people, for lots of different reasons. First of all, if you're a rhythm player, your right hand so that loosens and dexterity in there is super important, but come on. I can do this. And it's really loud. Hang on, just, let me do that. There we go. So the idea there is that the right hand is remaining loose, whether I'm going, and there'll be times I might want to play it with a different attack. I want to be able to own both of those things. And when you begin to anchor, anchoring is the kickstand version of forearm playing, and you don't have that level of control. So again, the idea is, what is the most natural motion to move your right hand? So the other thing, I'm going to tell you why I do the pinky up in the air thing, just in case you were wondering, is that for years of playing Floyd Roses, where the bar was about here, it was about this tall, and it came out there, especially if you didn't have it sag down. So I just had to learn to kind of bring the pinky up so it didn't hit the bar. So that's why that whole pinky thing goes on there like that. So no anchoring, but at the same time, these guys, 1, 2, 3, and 4 are resting. And that's an important part of the deal here. Okay, so I hope that answers that question, and feel free to ask more about that. All right, Emmanuel, how are you, my friend? Another one of my favorite students. Do you still practice that kind of pentatonic exercise at that pace? My dear friend, that is such a great question. And make it less rote or evolve it more towards musicality. Oh, wait, hold on. I just read 2 lines at the same time. Do you still practice that kind of exercise, the exercise at the slow pace? That was an hour yesterday at 80 BPM. I basically started off at 90. It's like, I got this. And I was like, no, I don't got this. Then at 90, and then at 85, I'm like, I got this. I'm like, you know what? The whole goal of that particular exercise, for me to get this, see if I can not embarrass myself. Let's do this. All right, I sped up a little bit. I'm not going to be able to get the finger angle I want here. But this guy is about this, and this guy. And then that pinky has to come across and do a finger roll there. That's just brutal. All right, hang on. My overhead camera should be coming up here, and it's not. There we go. All right, so that's this guy right here. Now, I had a little bit of a gap when I went. So that's the stuff where we're talking about. What did I call that? Hang on a second. I called that flow, note flow. So I'm not going. I'm going. I had a little tiny bit of a gap at the end there, and there was one spot where a little open string started to creep, but that would have been the G string. But again, that's where you're aware of that. But if you're practicing it fast, you'll never catch that stuff. And my whole thing is I don't want to just play those at blistering speed. It's a great question, Emmanuel. I want to... oh, hang on. I got to bring that into the stream. That's good. That's good. Oh, wait, hang on. Oh, I got it. Okay. By the way, I want to tell everybody the reason that was so small there. Ed May, my dear friend, how are you? My dear brother. That's awesome. So as a quick aside, hitting the pause button, I'm streaming at 4K. And the reason I'm streaming at 4K, because invariably somebody's going to ask about some tech stuff, is that, oh, what's going on, Doug? How are you? Oh, my word. The 30-second notes. I'm streaming at 4K because 30% of the people these days are watching on some big giant TV screen, like you. So guess what happens when you stream a 1080p stream onto a 4K TV? Well, it's a quarter of the size getting blown up to 4K. So I did a bunch of testing, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But that's why I'm like, why is that so small? I'm like, oh, right, I'm in 4K. Back to our previous message. All right. Tom Whalen. Hello. From Seattle, no less. Probably an external FAQ. How to take an exercise or exercise ideas and make it less rote and involve more towards musicality. That is a great question, and it is not an external FAQ. It is the essence of why these exercises are so incredibly important, because most of these things in their organic state. I used to make this analogy when I was still teaching kind of in person with people. I would kind of talk about this, what I call the sphere of music. The idea is most exercises, and just about everything Joe ever taught me, took some idea out of the sphere of music that's this thing that's flowing and it's spinning and circling, it's got motion. You're taking some little idea out of that little slice and going, all right, group sequences of 4 notes. And then the idea is then you kind of begin to put it back into that slice. So that it's a great question and super, super important. One, that's why the metronome, and I'm pointing to the one you can't see, but that's why that's so important. That is your drummer. Because what you get used to doing, this is why the tempo and the note flow is so important, is that is how we get smooth and control. Every guitar player wants smooth and control. Like, one of the things that was consistently at the list in the top 5, and highly so, was more control. Everybody wants more control. It is absolutely against every feeling in your human existence to go, the only way I'm going to play it fast grade is to play it ridiculously slowly. But Emmanuel, that's just it. So that was yesterday. I spent an hour playing it at 80, going up the neck, and doing it. All those things were notes that I made as I was doing that. Because I'm like, this is the torture I went through, but I love that. Because I know once I keep practicing like that, I know for a fact, and I'm just going to be really honest with you. As much as I know that for a fact, that's not how I've been practicing. I don't know, the past 4 years. I've been getting better. And this is one of the things that's so important to me, especially for you, is that the GTR show, Guitar Technology Recording, we're going to talk about lots of gear, but the number one goal of a number of these shows is how can we make you a better guitar player around one particular thing over the course of a week. First of all, I want to grow the show. But second of all, I also want to be able to provide a value such that if you're going to invest your day and your time here, I want you to kind of go, that was great. And it was free 99, as my buddy Bruce likes to say. So the deal is, by practicing it with the metronome, that's the equivalent of practicing it with the drummer. So you're practicing all these riffs, right? And then what happens when you go to play the riff, in the midst of some sort of solo sequence, now you cut and paste those different sequences, because that's ultimately what these guys are about. So one of the things I was playing, that's an exercise called 3-note per string speed, exercise B. Exercise A, you heard me do. And that's variation number 3, up the neck a little high, down the neck high to low. And the idea with that puppy is it's a matter of just getting that right hand loose. Exercise B is taking it on the top 2 strings. And out of that, so there are all these little and you begin to put them in place, and you just all of a sudden, because sequences are where fast playing happens. That is placing those things. Let me pull up the track real quick. And that's in some wacky key because I'm tuned down. By the way, one of the things that I did, Doug, friend, you best ever. Oh, thanks, Igor. The idea is that so if I took, hang on, right application, there we go. So so if we were taking that little sequence, all right, knowing exactly what the heck you're playing. So if I were to take that, that's the lick. So And now I've taken that idea that started off as something I kind of did in the flow of it and then kind of turned it into an exercise, because now I can play it at any of those different locations. And yes, okay, all right. So 10 o'clock. So let me, oh, Melissa, look at her canceling out the answered questions. Okay, so in a minute, we're going to be turning to some inversions, because one of the most terrifying things for guitar players is inversions, but I want to make sure I answer all these questions. So again, the neat thing is that exercises are, okay, it's a great analogy. You watch all these athletes training. The exercises are where we train. Now, that said, there's also scrimmage, right? So that's why working in this process of having some time where you just spend time playing is super, super important. It's actually one of the reasons why at the beginning of the shows, I will always be playing in. One is that, it's there's nothing like more intimidating to live streaming, it's going to replay, knowing whoever may or may not show up, just kind of going, are you on your game? Did you miss a note? Did you play some note? They're like, oh, terrible. Off they go. But the idea is it also gives me a chance to kind of point out that, kind of the whole point of this thing is without going overly self-indulgent, that like A minor, and being able to, that was again that same thing we talked about a little bit earlier. I did it for G major, but it was up down up, up down up. And the idea of practicing with the metronome is then when it's time to kind of lean back in the time a little bit if you need to or want to, then you can do that. Okay, great stuff, great stuff. Best alternate picking exercise, Jim. I would say what I was doing there on the high E string is it. Why? Because the right hand is now muting those unwanted strings and you're just able to focus on and only on the top. There we go. Sorry, hang on. So the idea is we're taking notes of the G major scale, G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, A, and B. So we got on the top there, and we're just taking groups of 3 notes played 2 times each. Minding my tempo. There are 4 variations. Variation number 1 goes up low to high. Variation number 2 goes up high to low. Thanks, Andy. Variation number 3 goes up low to high. And goes down high to low. Variation number 4 goes up high to low. With pleasure, my friend. And down low to high. Uh, so, uh, and that was variation number 3, which if you're looking for the condensed one, you just have a minimal amount of time. Low to high is in GAB, and high to low as in BAG on the way down. That exercise will work wonders. The other thing you can do is what I call the subdivision method. Once you kind of get it, and here's the thing, slowly. Listening for putting those seams together. And playing it slowly enough so you're relaxed as you do it, so the fingers are totally sure where they're going. That doesn't mean you don't necessarily miss a note here or there, but that is where you build accuracy. And again, that was on so many people's top 5 list. The reason they don't have accuracy is they don't practice slow. But that exercise will change your world. It's a great exercise, and boom, enjoy. Bobby from San Francisco, what's going on, my man? Gear, what do you like about your Legacy amp compared to my Marshalls? So I encourage everybody, I'm begging everybody, please go over to my YouTube and the most recent Celestion Speaker Mix Pro video, I did all the demos on the Carbon Legacy 3, and I was absolutely blown away. Basically, every time I've used that amp, I did it to kind of quote unquote, do the pseudo Vi thing, right? So this is the first time I really go like, what happens when I do the DOP? By the way, Steve Vai is actually the guy that first used the phrase the DOP. So in association with that, my wife thinks it's cheesy when I refer to myself as the DOP. So I just need to clarify that. But the point being is when I kind of went in and kind of did my thing with that amp, first let me see how easily I can pull up. Oh, I can do it this easily. Give me a moment. This scene is like, give me a moment. You got to hear the clean sound. It's just unreal. Unlock this. There we go. All right. So let's presume I'm not going to blow my head off here. Choose file. This will take half a second. All right. Let me get over here. Series SM. All right. Renders. Outro. There we go. This one. Give me a moment. Sorry, I wasn't expecting to do this. Normally, my goal is to actually be much more prepared when I go to do this. But I love Melissa. If Steve Vai says it, then it's cool. I would have to agree. All right, so here it is on the clean sound. I was like, what? And Steve's got, the thing about Sisters, I mean, he's got a great clean sound, but it's very Vai, right? So this is me not doing so Vi. Let's take a listen here. Hey, I'm Doug, and welcome to the third video in the Celestion Speaker Mix Pro video series. This time around, All right. And my mic's unmuted. So, all right. So, in any case, that's the second channel. I'm like, what the heck is that? Ridiculous amplifier. So, yes. All right. Best way to practice. This is Doug DeJong. How you doing, my man? From down under. Great to see you. Brisbane. Queensland, no less. Best way to practice 30-second note rhythms. Bump them up in 5B, basically double up, get your 16th note subdivision to the point where it's at 200, bump it down, and play that same subdivision at 100, bump it up to 105, 110, and let the neighbors feel the flowing of the wind, flowing from those shredding notes, firing across the neighborhood. I love you shredder, you. And I love the first name as well. But yes, and yes. Awesome. All right. Excellent. Great question. To tell you the truth, I don't play a lot of 30-second notes. My favorite fast figure is 16th note triplets. Those are the ones that I really enjoy the most. Okay, so let's see here. So I am not a fan traditionally of what they call the caged system. More often than not, that's referred to not for chords, but for pentatonic and modal mapping. Basically, C-A-G-E-D refers to 5 patterns, and generally, but not exclusively, they're kind of modalizing the pentatonic. Not that there's anything wrong with that. And I'll take a brief left turn long enough to just say, look, how about there? There we go. No, how about here? So if I take the notes of the minor pentatonic there, top 2 strings, that's going to be, in this case, B, D, E, and G, which is the 5, flat 7, 1, and flat 3. And so it's basically leaving out either the flat 6 or the natural 6 or the flat 2 or the natural 2. So if you know the Dorian mode has a natural 6 and a natural 2, that's Dorianizing the pentatonic. Phrygian's got a flat 6 and a flat 2. That's Phrygianizing the minor pentatonic, and minor's got a flat 6 and flat 3. I'm so used to going in order that, like, because I'm starting at the 5 here. So basically, here's minor. So you got your pentatonic, Dorianized, Phrygianized, and minorized. And the idea is that allows you to fill in those gaps with kind of, those notes. But you're starting. You're still kind of going for those longer notes. Yeah. Sorry about that thing. So I gotta tell everybody what's so funny is that the great thing about streaming is there's always a new mistake to make. So like I have more notes around here just in case when I go to playing, for some reason I mute the stream. But basically this time I just decided I'm going to put the earbuds in, so everything should be great except for the fact that when the movie, I could actually see that when the audio was playing from the video, I could see in the application that I use called Loopback Audio, I could see that it was also coming through my audio interface, not just from the movie, because of some reason. In any case, so in theory, it could have created an offset. I should have heard it because in theory, I'm at monitoring the broadcast. But the point being is that I'm pretty anal about, like, let me make sure there's not an offset in the audio there. So I'm like, hey, let me mute this thing. Of course, I've got literally 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them, and of course, didn't see it coming. In any case, all right. So we're going to be talking now about this Ed Cage thing, and I would actually suggest you think about it as an E shape. That is to say, that's an E major bar chord. Sorry, an E shape G major bar chord, and that right there is a D major, a D shape G major bar chord. And this is a C shape, G major bar chord. And this is an A shape, G major bar chord. And that's a G shape, G major bar chord. In any case, this concept of E, D, C, A, G is great for understanding chords. And what we're going to do is we're going to use to unpack. If we take a look at the 4th, 3rd, and 2nd string, out of that chord right there, And if you take a look at the fourth, third, and second string out of this chord right here, you got that chord right here, and we're going to look at the fourth, third, and second string out of that chord right there. You have G major in first inversion, and G major in second inversion. That is to say, we're going G, B, D, B, D, G, and D, G, B. It's the same three notes, but we're putting the G, the 1 in the bass. By the way, those notes, if I took the G major scale and took the third and fifth notes and took up an octave, that's where those chords come from. And what we're doing is just going, placing those in, basically starting off this next note, off of each successive note of the chord in the bass. Now, this is where it gets cool. If you take that concept and go, well, wait a second, I want to be a keyboardist. And this is one of the really, really cool things we're going to be covering, is how do we actually play better guitar, not just when we're playing lead, but as playing rhythm players. And here's the deal. I will go so far as to say, well over 50% of the people who are watching this can't go G, D, G, B, D, G and go 1, 5, 1, 3, 5, 1. There would be some thinking about what that quote-unquote voicing actually is. And so the point being is that we have, and it's one of the great things about the guitar. Not quite the right guitar for that. With this sound, that is. So the idea is most guitar players are really unaware of actually what's happening at the note, name, and scale degree number level of what's happening inside their chords, which is one of the reasons they just kind of play the same shapes and the same keys over and over. What the goal of today's lesson is to, one, first of all, just take the scariness out of inversions, and two, give you some great new ideas on how to play something that is going to allow you to come up So basically what I did there was I played, I'll take the secret sauce off for a second. That's an exercise called the triad chord relay. And the goal of that exercise is just basically be able to take the triads for the key of G major up and down the neck with an even tempo. And basically Steve Vai would describe that in his book, and did, as chord scales. That is, say, we're taking the 1, 3, and 5 of the G major scale. The G becomes an A, the B becomes a C, the D becomes an E, A, C, E, B, D, F sharp, C, E, G, D, F sharp, A, E, G, B, F sharp, A, C, G, B, D. So you're basically just kind of moving up the scale on each string in chords, hence the name chord scales. So that's a great way to be able, I prefer to actually see that we're playing the 1, 3, and 5 of major, 1 flat 3, 5 of Dorian, 1 flat 3, 5 of Phrygian, 1, 3, 5 of Lydian. I play the 5, 1, 3, 5 mixed Lydian, 1 flat 3, 5 of minor, 1 flat 3, 5 of Locrian, and 1, 3, 5 of major. So you end up collectively with major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished, major, major, diminished, minor, major, major, minor, minor, major. And you can think of that as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. And most guitar players, awesome. Thanks so much, Andy. Most guitar players have a tendency to traverse the neck or just toggle between 6 and 5th string root chords. Not that there's anything wrong with it. That's how we play. But the idea being to go G major, A minor, B minor, C major, D major, E minor. Oh, I've lost my mind here. C major, D major, E minor, F sharp, diminished, and G major. I've lost my mind. So basically I'm going G major, just 1, 3, 5. I'm going A minor, 1, flat 3, 5. I'm going B minor, 5, 1, flat 3. I'm going C major, 5, 1, 3. I'm going D major, 3, 5, 1. I'm going E minor, flat 3, 5, 1. And I'm going F sharp diminished, 1, flat 3, 5. Flat 5, my bad. It's diminished. And back to G major. So that's the ability to do what a keyboardist would do. And if you added some of the secret sauce here, Now, the thing is it doesn't necessarily sound like the secret sauce until you get the bass player adding that stuff. But what happens is the biggest challenge guitar players have, and this is one of the things I saw over and over, I play the same stuff, I'm stuck in a rut, I play the same stuff, I'm stuck in a rut. Well, if you play the same chords over and over, you're going to play the same things over the top of them. Who'd have thunk it? And so the idea is just having some fresh ideas to work with as you're working with chords. So just very briefly, we're simply just taking this concept of taking, shush. They have foot switches for this stuff. We're taking the G major chord, 1, 3, 5. A minor, 1, flat 3, 5. B minor, 5, 1, flat 3. C major, 5, 1, 3. D major, 3, 5, 1. E minor, flat 3, 5, 1. F sharp diminished, 1, flat 3, flat 5. And G major, 1, 3, 5. We will be going over more of this in weeks to come, but I promised people that I was going to go over chord inversions because it's just one of the best ways you can begin to add some different flavor to what you do. And what's neat is especially you place it against a bass note, all of a sudden being able to play in this one register. First of all, it's one of the reasons as you watch keyboardists play, they're just sitting there just like, they're so chill. When it's time to solo, they're ready to rock. But the other thing that they also have a huge understanding for, and this is really, really important, is not only are these chords important to be able to map chords in a key, but those are the resolution tones for not only the key of G major, or A Dorian, or B Phrygian, or C Lydian, or D Mixolydian, or E minor, or F sharp Locrian. Those are the resolutions as your tones for as you're playing over any one of those chords in that key. So if you actually know where those inversions are up and down the neck and can toggle between them like that, you now have unlocked which notes to resolve to as you're playing over that B minor chord, but you're down here at the bottom of the neck. That actually means like, oh, snap. So if I've got a chord progression that's basically, oh, sorry, my bad. And more importantly than being able to know what those note names are, and this kind of gets back to Tom's question, there's a certain amount of clinical approaches kind of going, okay, what's going on here? But then as you begin to discover, like, all right, those are the notes that are there, your ear begins to hear them. So that's one of the important things is we're taking an ear along for part of this journey as well. And this is what's neat about that is it gets us set up for that. All right, let me take a quick journey over here into comments real quick. And I have a 10:40 lesson, so I'm going to have to get out here in just a moment. But in the meantime, I just want to say, first of all, because, yes, no sound. Thank you for that. Doug, lost your volume. Muted. You're muted. Lost audio. Your audio went out. I always appreciate it when people are like, no, Doug, don't do that. Okay, so first of all, many thanks for showing up here. there are a number of topics that I'm going to be charting out. There are a number of new things I'm also going to be doing in the midst of the show. Now, sorry to show you the top of my head there. So this is a magic piece of technology that is really so incredibly cool that if you are a live streamer with a guitar in your hands, this should take us back to the countdown. Good. So this enables you to kind of be playing over the countdown, so long as you don't have your mic muted. And then when the countdown is done, you just foot switch into whatever scene you want to have set up there. And the neat thing about this is that I've got some fun new scenes. Hi. And so, yeah. So before we get out of here, I want to talk a little bit about some of the tech that's going on here. Interestingly enough, nobody asked about tech, so I hope I'm not going to bore anybody here. But in particular, there was a thread over the past week. I've been making some upgrades to my studio, just trying to take advantage of kind of the end of the 2021 tax year, just to kind of be able to write some stuff off at the end of the year. So I got some new stuff here, and the goal is basically take what I'm doing and just make it infinitely harder than I made it the week before. And every week, hopefully, what you're going to be seeing. Yeah. Oh, that's funny, Nandini. India, right now in Austin, Texas. How to incorporate interesting rhythm ideas and pauses in improvised soloing. Let me come back to that. That came in a little bit later, but I will grab that. Let me just finish what I was saying here about the technology side of things. So, first of all, I think at this point, most everybody is thinking, because I'm seeing the number of people I know from the guitar camps starting to stream. Line 6 Go, way to go, Pod Go, that's great. Thanks so much, Andy. All right, so here's the thing. Whether it's Zoom, and by the way, Zoom has made another update to kind of their interface. So sometime very shortly, I'm going to be doing, and we'll probably talk about it a little bit in the next show, but I'll also be doing a video on Zoom for guitar players. Awesome, thank you, Mike. That's really stupid. Hang on a second. Let's try this again. This is Andy. Thank you. Really appreciate it. And let's see here. Where's the pod go? There we go. Again, Andy, much appreciated. Pod go. Oh, I see. I've made that long enough that on a long comment that doesn't want to fit. Let's see if I can change. There we go. That'll help. All right, good. Congratulations. Way to go, so to speak. And thank you, Mike. Much appreciated. Awesome. All right. So here's the deal. Whether you're just doing it to kind of share your music and the songs you compose with the people that you're friends with, or whether you have, higher aspirations than that, and I don't really care which it is, the reality is we're all kind of starting to shoot video, and we're all wanting to have great sounding audio. So I wanted to talk about two really quick things. One, this AirStep, which I'm going to be doing a demo for very soon, but it is exceedingly cool. Shane, thank you so much, my friend. Much appreciated. Shane is my 1040, so he very kindly, everybody needs to thank Shane, because he was my 9 a.m. and Brad is my 9:30, so I actually have endeavored to actually have some different folks sacrifice their time to make this happen. So I'm really, really very, very thankful for that. So this right here is the AirStep app, and basically that is how I programmed all this groovy stuff into the AirStep. And why are you not AirStepping out? There we go. All right, so the point being is the ability to do this via this cute little Bluetooth guy right here. Uh-oh, what have I done? Doppler's done something. He broke it. Oh, I stepped into the wrong bank. There we go. So this thing is so cool to have down at your feet. Programming it, once I kind of wrap my head around it, and it's an interesting thing. I'm getting better at MIDI, but this combination of MIDI and Bluetooth and HID is just something that's going to take me a quick second to figure out. That thing actually, once I kind of knew my way around the aforementioned interface, it was actually really easy to just kind of get it set and just basically be able to control the different scenes again from one's feet is a big deal. And I, really enjoyed just being able to toggle between these different things without having them use my hands. The whole 4K thing. If you have the bandwidth to stream at 4K, the thing that I've started seeing over and over in statistics and analytics is that there are 30 or so percent of the people that are actually watching on a big giant TV, which means 30 or so percent of the people are actually watching in 4K. And most of the big time streamers don't stream in 4K. They don't suggest streaming in 4K. And unless you have the bandwidth to get away with it, I wouldn't suggest doing it either. What I did today, and just so you guys know, because the reveal of this is this matters to me a great deal. It's a new show. My goal is to take my bar and raise it higher and higher every week, and basically every Friday is spent in preparation for this show. And you could do me this favor. One, please go check out the Celestin video, make some comments. Two, let people know about this show. It is the most valuable thing you could do for me. I cannot thank you enough for considering doing that, because I'm putting a prolific amount of energy into making this the best I possibly can. So the concept of kind of like this digital journey that we're on is that in preparing for this, one of the things that I do is I do some test streams. And so that means one of the interesting things is locally, there's an offset between my video and my audio in terms of what I'm watching as I'm looking locally. But in testing it on Facebook, because YouTube's pretty rock solid, but Facebook's kind of whack, especially since it's basically taking 4K and bouncing it down to 720. The idea is I wanted to test it. I wanted to test my audio levels. One of the things that I've been experimenting with is just making sure that my mic... Thank you very much, Gabe. What's going on, my man? Happy New Year. Much appreciated there. I like the shades. Tom, that is a great question. So the funny thing is, I use a shotgun mic. And shotguns in particular are particularly susceptible to that type of noise, especially since that all you would hear in the room here is... and I've also got a limiter, the Universal Audio Precision limiter, basically on the input channel strip that is kind of the gateway to all audio that goes into my computer, regardless of whether it's going into Pro Tools or whether it's feeding through an application I use called Loopback into the application that I use. And I'm going to put a bunch of links. Tom, by the way, if you're watching, I'm going to be putting together this list of various gear. But down below, any of the gear that I talked about or used that's available from Sweetwater, those links are going to be down below. And any of the video gear, those links will be down below with affiliate links over to Amazon. I do make a little something on the back end, so let me just give that disclaimer, but this is not a sponsored stream. Tom, to answer your question, I'm going to be asking about a silent version of that, because I did notice as I was doing some of my tests, I'm like, oh, I can hear the click. But they're presuming you're using this in a setting where you're not just kind of like with a mic open like that, right? All right. The point being, this 4K thing, is that I did a number of tests, and I also did test running a Pro Tools session, and then I also tried a test of running the backing tracks, just running them in iTunes to see if that was going to make a difference. One of the other things that I'm going to suggest for people to try, and we'll be using this, is just these little RC5 loopers, and those are MIDI controllable, so we'll be talking about how to do that in an upcoming stream as well. And there'll be a video on that as well. But the thing is that what's neat about kind of doing it in a streaming setting is it's interactive in real time. You can make a comment like, those foot switches are really noisy. And that's the great sort of feedback, because most of these manufacturers I have the privilege of working with really closely means that feedback comes back directly to them. Oh, there we go. Hey, Tom, what's going on, my man? Awesome. Awesome. So here's the thing. What we're going to do is we're going to be looking at a range of these different things. One of the other questions that I saw happening was about some drives. And so I don't know if Chris Stark is here, but Chris, there was a question about the T5 and the T7 drives on using an external drive. And basically, one of the things that I'm getting going here is basically a switcher that I can use and then kind of switch between, but it can also capture the feed from any of the cameras that are going to it, and then put that on a drive. And it's the ATEM Mini Pro ISO. I guess I'll have to put the link down below. But one of the things you can do is basically use a drive. So I've been investigating some of the different drive options. Is that on the desktop still? No, it's gone. Oh, there it is. So this little guy from Neewer, when I launched my last endeavor called GearTunes, we did this giant live stream, and we ended up buying these guys, and it's basically, you just plop the drive down in here, and I happened to be pulling this out of kind of where my second studio is going to be upstairs. That's a great question, Bradley. And thank you, Tom. That is a great question, and we are going to find a way of yes, yes, and yes, and we'll figure out how to do that. And maybe we're going to use the same form as what we're going to do. Yeah. No, it's dated. No, you know what? Let's leave the form there, because that way people can hopefully see which questions got answered in which stream. So let's, we're going to keep the link the same for right now to keep it easy. And when we post about this, we'll post those questions in advance. All right. Okay, so the neat thing about this is I'm looking at this thing, and I'm looking at it like it says USB 3. Oh, and I'm like, oh. So the whole point is that basically my buddy Chris Stark is having some issues with one of his drives. And so the long story short is this, is that I've spent a prolific amount of time on Amazon doing something that I use Amazon for, and I also use Sweetwater for. So this is our gear tip before we jump out of here, because I have a lesson that starts in 1 minute. I don't just read the positive reviews. I find the worst reviews. And there are always some people that don't know how to use the technology and blame the company for what went wrong. But there are always some people that have a bad experience and sometimes whine or don't whine about it. But regardless of what it is, the negative reviews always tell you a lot about what's wrong. So the T7s, that is the Samsung SS solid state drives, the faster ones, they had some heat issues, which is why I went with the T5s. I bought basically the internal and external versions of the same drive, because the concept of having a heat issue where one of the people were talking, a couple of people were talking about it's so hot to the touch you really couldn't touch it. That's a problem. And you know, I would much rather have a drive that's a little bit slower, that's not melting down and hot to the touch, than one that there are that many reports. Now, the other thing is quite often, as you look at the dates of some sort of issue, you can tack that to a particular production era. So it was about May and June of 2019 where they were having the heat issue with the new T7s, but it was still enough of an issue. I was like, I'm not going near that. I'm not going near that with my data. I'd much rather try the tried and true one that still had some negative reviews, but very, 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 very few. So in any case, in closing, I will be back next Saturday at 9 a.m. Please be so kind as to join us again. Bring your questions. Every week there'll be a primary topic, and then there's going to be all sorts of other fun stuff that we'll cover as well, such that way, you know, there's stuff to sink your teeth into. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am thankful and privileged. Happy New Year, and I hope it is a great year for you.